So hi everyone, I'm Carl. So we're from group 6. I am with JEZZA VERGARA on the INDAYLYN, and we are going to report about the used theories. So just to give you the overview. So the proposition theory treats the sentence and other linguistic items as inert abstract entities whose structure can be studied as if under a microscope. But under the Ludwig Wittgenstein argued that the words and sentence are more likely game piece or tokens used to make moves in rule-governed conventional social practice. So by reading in front of your screen right now the nature of representation, the relation between thought, language, and reality, and the limits of thought and representation, and the nature of logic and logical truth. So yeah, under that meaning, they said that a meaning is not an abstract object. Meaning is a matter of a role, an expression placed in human social behavior. To know the expressions, meaning is just to know how to deploy the expression appropriately in conventional settings. So, use theories of this kind face two main obstacles. So, explaining how language can differ from ordinary conventional rule governed activities such as chess games that generally no meaning, and explaining how in particular a sentence can mean that so and so, as the French la negre est blanche or blanque means that snow is white. Robert Brandon has recently offered a use theory that claims to perform these feats. So as we in chapter 2, Russell's habit was to write a sentence on the blackboard and examine as he contented the proposition expressed by the sentence, treating it as an object of interest in itself and trying to discern its structure. So Ludwig Wittgenstein and J.L. Austin argued that this picture of how language works and how it should be studied is completely wrong. Language and linguistic entities are not bloodless abstract or objects that can be studied like specimen under a microscope. Rather, language takes the form of behavior, activity, specifically social practice. Sentences do not have lives of their own. The things we write on the blackboards and the alleged proposition they express are fairly violent abstraction from the utterings performed by human beings in the real world context or particular occasion. And for a person to utter something, in first and foremost for that person to do something, it is a bit of behavior that by convention has gotten swept into a rule-governed social practice. We have already encountered a version of this in chapter 2, for it is from the same perspective that Strawson wielded his several objections against Russell's initial attractive theory of descriptions. And whether or not we are ultimately convinced by the objections that they were fresh and striking, and to many people still intuitively compelling, that it is a good letter of recommendation for a perspective itself. So let me proceed to my part, which is the inferentialism. So I will be explaining to you what will be the main points about the inferentialism. So inferentialism, who one utters a sentence and thereby make assertion, one is committing oneself to depend assertion against whatever objects or challenge might be by a hearer. So at this point, it is attempting to make some serious concession to the referential theory. It is the inferentialism, okay? inferentialism, but that would be to overlook the most recent incarnation of Sellar's inferential theory by Brandon 1994, a 700-page monster piece which at least has a potential for evading some foregoing objection. So, Brandon develops a particular concept of use, a normative conception according to which a sentence use is the set of commitments and entitlements associated with public adherence of that sentence. His paradigm is that of asserting, considering as an actual social act. When one utters a sentence and thereby makes an assertion, one is committing oneself to defend that assertion against whatever objection or challenge might be made by a hearer. The defense would take the form of giving reason in support of assertion, typically by inferring it from some other sentence whose uttering is not so readily open to challenge. And in making assertion, one also confers on oneself the entitlement to make further inference from it. The social game of giving and asking for reasons is governed by rules, of course, and the score it kept. Okay, notions of scorekeeping plays a large role in Brandon's system. It is the reasons that would rightly be offered in support of the sentence S, and in the norms accordingly to which S could rightly be given in defense for the sentence that constitutes to S meaning. As word please, Wittgenstein reference plays no important role in this theory for Brandon. Reference is just a construct out of referential practice, defined on whose sentence and not a fit subject, in theorizing a casual history theory is entirely beside the point. So Brandon's system is very complex and we cannot examine it here, but I note that it overcomes some of the objection raised so far against the Wittgenstein view. Again, objection number 5, it does distinguish language adherence from Slav and chess moves and so on, since those are not the sorts of things in support of which one gives reason, rebut challenges, and so on. So we have here that thought of Brandon holds substantial expression, have meanings only derivedly from whole sentence meaning. He also recognized the weak kind of compositionality, and so he may evade objection 3. And just in case the centrality of the epistemological notion to inferentialist theory, defense, support, justification, acceptance suggests that the theories is closer in the spirit of verification accounts than to Wittgenstein's original idea. So, yeah, just to understand things, in summarize, use theories have its meaning, are not abstract object like proposition, a linguistic expression's meaning is determined by the expression characteristic function in human social behavior. So, according to Wittgenstein, linguistic expression are like game token used to make moves rule govern in social practices. So, use theories are faced to main obstacles: explaining how language use differ from the ordinary conventional rule govern activities that generate no meaning, and explaining how the sentence means, and so on. So, the other topics will be explained by my co-reporter. So, thank you very much for listening to me. I'm Carl, and this is my report.
Used in roughly Wittgensteinian sense. Wittgenstein in 1953 and Austin 1961 to 1962, these two develops the social behavioral idea in their different way. But this view concentrates on Wittgenstein's view, in which he opposed the systematic theorizing and philosophy, and even his followers objected to any praise along his line of Wittgenstein's theory or his doctrine. When, a mis- when the meaning is mysterious itself, one way to reduce the mystery is to enter its domain to make it more directly familiar. In order to handle the meaning, try to think of it in a receiving ends, the grasping of meaning or understanding its linguistic expression. It is just like a product of having been taught and learned a language. Obviously, when you try to look at it, what is learned and taught is a complicated form of social behavior. Learning a language is to make a moves to engage certain kinds of governing by highly complex sets of rules. Truth was obscured by entity theories that treat meaning as static inert things. Let's proceed to Wittgenstein's view. He snored at the view that meaning is essentially involved in inferential relation between linguistic activity like playing football and thought that language is like a playing game with words. Accordingly, language is not a matter of marks on a blackboard. It is the relation to abstract entity called proposition. It is that something that people do in a highly rules-governed, a conversational way. Moreover, linguistic expression is like a piece of game. He make an example was the game chessmen, in which a pawn or a rook is defined by a chess rule that govern its initial position and subsequent legal moves. It is characteristically moves according to the games, the convenitude by the tacit rules governing its correct conversational uses. This is the words that we usually use occasionally. Those do not seem to mean what they do in a virtue of standing for anything or virtue of greeting, evincing consternation, deploring, apologizing, endorsing, thanking, protesting, committing, and oneself to bet and blessing. They are the noises that we make with their socially defined functional rule, and uses them in appropriate occasions with appropriate responses that was characteristically performed in the context of our current social practices. Wittgensteinians view the locus and the natural home of all meaning, though thought most expressions have vastly more complicated social rules. Let's proceed to the analogy of Wittgenstein about the builders and his assistant. Who has four kinds of building? Who have four kinds of building stone that they use. They speak a little primitive language that have four corresponding words in it. The block, the pillars, the slab, and the assistant bring a stone of the appropriate shape, in which this point of view, the activity does not involve things of this shape, but the primary point is to initiate action, not to refer or to express an internal proposition. In addition of Wilfred Seller, 1963 to 1974, the one who invoked the idea of inferring as a social act according to him, this being respectively rules that govern what is supposed to say in a response to a certain sort of non-linguistic events that responds to a certain linguistic utterance, but the most important is the language rule. And for the inferring theory, the one to an inferring helps for what might seems to be the static abstract relation of entailment practice of inferring the one from the others. Also, the use theory. It is this practice itself that makes the inferring valid, not any independent guarantee that infers preserved truth.
Hi, this is INDAYLYN ONDA. In the continuation of our report, uh, I will discuss the topic of objection and some replies. The The beauty of inferential theory, it is effortless avoidance of every single objection we have made to each of the three traditional theories, which is referential, ideational, and proposition. So, referential, meaning the word expression lies in what it points out in the world. And in ideational, the word meaning are subjective ideas. And the proposition is referred to some of all the following the primary bearers of truth value. So for addition, it is naturalistic theories in that it focuses attention on the actual features of language as used in the real world. Still, there are some formidable problems which are exactly the same as between Earth and twin Earth. So of an Earth utterance and its twin, one may be true and other is false. Thus an expression meaning is not exhausted by an expression rule in a language game. So Hilary Putnam, he classified the language game he classified the language game as, he said that more kindly, and denied that we and our twin Earth doppelgangers are playing the same game. So doppelgangers is a person who looks exactly like you, or doppelgangers is a biological unrelated look-alike or a double of a living person. Like, for example, Coco Martin have a person who looks like him, but she's a woman, but the same face, the same, but they are not related. An example, you have also the same. There is a person that looks like you. Maybe you are here in the Philippines, and the other is in the out of the country or in Malaysia. So but you are not related. So the Earth and the twin Earth, the Earth meaning is refers to you, and the twin Earth is refers to other person that looks like you but not related to you. So this is the objection of this, that for example the water or H2O, they are the same, and the water and the H2O is the scientific name of water, but while our twins do not, but deals with XYG different roles altogether. So let's move on and object about a proper name. It says proper name pose a problem for the use theories. Wittgenstein stated, a rule use is for the name, it has candidate roles that occur to pose him the use theories into a description theory of meaning for names. So Wittgenstein found descriptivism, congenial, but without reading Kripke. So in objection 3, Wittgensteinian theory seems helpless in facing of the original datum. The ability to understand long, utterly novel sentence is first hearing. The roles are directed one-to-one upon them, but the ability to understand and act on long novel sentence cannot be product of our knowing convention directed upon those utterance, for no conversation have been directed upon those utterance. So therefore, what is understood, that is a sentence meaning, not simply a matter of there being conventional norms directed upon the sentence deployment, for the sentence meaning is in large part a function of its internal structure as well. So let's move on. In objection 4, the use of an expression. So is it here that he have known the undergraduate who is genius picking up academic jargon on one short to another and slinging it around with great facility, but without understanding learning the knack of stringing the jargon expression together. So there are some people that they are just talking and talking a lot, but they don't understand what they are saying. But many people will appreciate them that because they are good in talking and expression, and they think that that is good. So in objection 5, maybe many roles govern social activities, sport, and games themselves, in particular, do not centrally involve the kind of the meaning that linguistic expression. And some community agrees to use certain words or any rate, sound, and marks in a peculiar way. They decide to put only words with the same number of syllables next to each other in threes or in other sentence or in rhyming pairs, where each string begins with a one-letter word and adds one letter successively to each ensuing item. If the newcomer happened upon this whimsical society, they knew nothing of the arrangement, she or he would not understand what's going on. The newcomers might in time work out all the rules according to which the various tokens were being used, and yet have no notion what, if anything, was being said. In a simple case, at least nothing is being said. Someone might suggest that such game, like the builder's language, is just too simple and or primitive to qualify. But it is hard to say how mere addition of further complexity would help. So there are some replies of this argument. Someone argued that it is rules that reach enough and advert often enough to ambient condition. operand and predication will be recoverable from the game description. And one would be tempted to conclude that waiter, so refers to the waiter and makes men's snack food. So the game moves would have meaning after all. So there are some rejoiners. They said that the utterance specified by the game rules would have meaning but only because they do stand for or refer to things and not just but because their conventional deployment behavior. The use here is explicit. Conditions are not sufficient for something being a language. So, Wiseman, in 1965, A158, anticipate an objection by contrasting the parlor game. The parlor game words like cheese moves and tennis shot bear a far less thus relation to life than words used in earnest or incorrect. A language game cannot encapsulate it, something we keep an arm's length and play just when we feel like it. So another rejoiners usually thinks of that close integrative referring as our words being about the things in which Wittgensteinian does not agree. The meaning essentially involves referring, and Wiseman needs to say that integration is instead. The idea seems to be that language games are integrated with other social practice, but it is hard to say how the linguistic moves take on proposition content, but without secretly introducing referring, we need not to take the properly to be a matter of the carrying the expression relation to an abstract entity of proposition. So in objection 6, it is one clear sense in which a social practice qualifies as an actual language. We are playing a game and using tokens according to a set of conventional rules and engaging in a social practice that may not only be fun but have some larger fun. It might even be in some way vital larger it might even be in some way vital to our way of life. The things the players in these various games have done may have significance in some sense, but nobody has made any assertion or asked anything or advised anyone to do anything. And thank you very much for watching. I hope that you understand my report, and thank you very much. God bless us all.